every goodbye was more and more difficult, especially when we got married last year. And then with my family there, my grandma had tears, my mom had tears, my sister had tears because we got married. And, normally you want to spend time, especially when you get married. And I wasn't possible to take him right away with me to Germany. But what I think was really, really important is the communication. So I think there was not even a day where we didn't communicate.
Welcome to International Love Story, the podcast about intercultural relationships. My name is Christina, and in today's podcast episode, I am going to welcome Lena. Lena is German, and her husband is from Cuba. And I'm so looking forward to have a conversation with her today to learn a little bit more about her, as well as obviously about their love story, how they met, the cultural differences, and why they're living in Germany at the moment. So I hope you are as excited as I am. And with this being said, let's just dive directly into the conversation. So hi, Lena. I'm so happy to have you here today. And as mentioned, let's just go ahead and introduce yourself. Who are you? What are you doing? Tell us all about you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lena. I'm from Germany, and I want to tell you about my relationship with my husband, who I met 4.5 years ago. And we were having a long distance relationship for 3 years or more. And last year we got married, and since July last year, my husband was also living with me here in Germany. And that's why I wanted to share with you our experience here as an intercultural couple living in Germany.
Thank you so much for the little introduction of yours. What catches my attention a lot is that you guys started a long-distance relationship as well. This is what Nacho and I did as well in the beginning. When we started dating, we had a long-distance relationship for 1.5 years. I mean, we're together since 8 years already, and I still remember those moments. It was like a roller coaster ride. There were a lot of up and downs quite vividly. So what I'd be interested in is, how did you guys started? Where did it start? How did you meet? And what brought you to where you are nowadays?
So when in 2019, I went on a solo backpacking trip to Mexico and Cuba. And I actually wanted to go scuba diving in Mexico. And it's not like and then I started looking at flights, and I saw, Cuba is next to Mexico. And so I decided also to go to Cuba to go with my backpack. And then one evening, I met Ismel, my now husband, in a restaurant in Trinidad in Cuba. And so we started to spend a couple of days together. And I also met right away his family, his friends. But then I had to leave again to Mexico. And during that time, we were still being in contact every day. Of course, it was a little bit different because at that time, most Cubans weren't using the mobile data or didn't have a mobile phone. At that time when we met, and still lots of people are using Wi-Fi at specific Wi-Fi spots or Wi-Fi parks, because not everyone has Wi-Fi. So we were communicating every day, all the time actually, but my husband, he had to go to those Wi-Fi spots to get a Wi-Fi card to use it to speak to me. And then a couple of days before I had to go back to Cuba actually to take my flight to Germany, I asked him if he would come to Havana, because I was about to stay 2 more days in Havana. So he said, yes, of course, I'm going to see you again. And then he took a 6-hour bus to come to Havana. And in those 2 days, we decided that we wanted to have a serious relationship, but we didn't know when we were going to see each other again. So the goodbye was really hard because we just didn't know if we're gonna see each other again in a couple of months or where this is gonna take us. And then we actually started to plan. So when I came back to Germany, we actually started to plan seeing each other again in April. And this was February 2020. And as most of you know, this is when the pandemic started. So of course I had to postpone my flight, and fast forward to November 2020. So we actually didn't see us for a whole year. So we had to have a long distance relationship for a whole year. And this is when I decided I'm going to quit my job here in Germany and I'm going to move to Cuba. Because if I'm not doing it at the moment, right now, I'm probably never going to do it again. And this relationship doesn't really make any sense because I don't know when I'm going to see him again. And I didn't want to have a relationship where you only see your partner 2 weeks, a year, and not really spend real time together and not just have those honeymoon phases time. Yeah, so I quit my job in Frankfurt and I decided I'm just going to pack all my bags and I'm going to move to Cuba. The only problem I had was that for European people, for Cuba, at that time, you could only get 3 months a period. So I was actually planning to take a language course at a university in Havana to stay for a longer period of time, for 6 months or longer. But I knew at least I could stay there for 3 months. So I packed my bag, I flew to Cuba, and it was like seeing my boyfriend at that time. I don't know, for everyone who has been in a long distance relationship, it's always, if you see that person again, I don't know how to explain this feeling, but it's like, it's an amazing feeling to see that person again. It's something, I don't know how to explain it, but it's a really good feeling. And we were actually lucky because at that time, I didn't have to have a vaccination yet. I didn't have to quarantine in a hotel. So we could actually stay in a casa particular. This is what you call something like a bed and breakfast, but staying with the local people. So we were actually really lucky that those kind of restrictions still didn't start. And so I was able to stay with him for 3 months. And what was also really important for me was I wanted to stay not like a tourist. I wanted to live like he was living in Cuba. So I actually stayed with him and his family. We didn't have any running water. We didn't have a fridge. We had to use a fridge that was next door. We didn't have a shower. So it was such a different experience. But it was important for me, if I want to stay with that person, I have to get to know him and his culture better. Wanted to get to know his family better. And this would be the best way to see if our relationship has a future. Yeah. So it was a really interesting and also difficult experience for me, as it's something totally different for someone who comes from a first world country moving to a third world country, and then also kind of living to the standards of a Cuban person. Yeah.
How did your family react once you told them, okay, I made this decision of quitting my job and packing my things, and I'm just gonna move to Cuba now?
I kept this relationship as a secret for a long time, but my best friends and my sister, they knew really kind of from the beginning. And I'm really lucky that my family and all my friends supported me in everything. And also when I told my parents, because my parents know who I am. I'm always doing what I think is right, what I feel in my heart, what my stomach tells me. And they knew that they couldn't stop from me quitting my job and doing what I think was right at moving to Cuba. I think they were a little bit afraid because they didn't know the other person, my husband now. But when I'm also talking about the support system, when we had the wedding last year in January, it was a spontaneous experience or a spontaneous decision, because we decided to get married the August year before. And I told my friends and I said, hey, we're going to get married. If you want to come and join us, you are welcome. And almost all my friends said directly, we're going to come to Cuba and we're going to be there for your wedding. And also my family, they said the same. And all of them, they have never met my husband before. When video chatting, my family has met him, but nobody has met him in person. And it was such a nice experience. It was when my family, actually also my grandparents, came to Cuba. And when my family saw him the first time, it was like taking him as his grandson or his son. And everyone was so happy to finally meet him. And yeah, and this has shown throughout our whole relationship, because when he also came here last year in July, everyone welcomed him with open. My mother at the moment is also learning Spanish to talk to him better. And we're actually planning another trip to Cuba with my family together and visiting his family. So yeah, I'm really lucky that I have this great support system. Yeah.
It also sounds to me like your family trusted you a lot, and they were like, if she's made this decision, she knows what's good for her, and we support her in any decision. Because in the end, if you think about it, like, it's kind of crazy. It is crazy to pack your things and to just live somewhere else, not really knowing what to expect. And especially, I mean, you had the chance to really get to know each other, I guess, during that 1 year period of long distance relationship. But in the end, it's still different between having a long distance relationship, closing the distance, and then really getting to know the other person, living together, knowing all her or his habits. And this is when things might also turn into a different direction. And that was something I was super afraid of when I moved to Miami in 2017, because I did not know what to expect exactly. And in my head, I was like, hey, it's the first guy I'm moving into with together. I've never lived with someone else, with a male person before. I had roommates, but obviously that's something different. And what I'm actually doing here, what am I actually doing here, and why am I pushing myself through it, and what happens if? But in the end, I also had the same experience as you did. I mean, in our case, it all went well. We're still here today, 8 years later. And also had a big support system, especially my mom, who was always like, I know you're going to make the right decision. He seems lovely. And then once she met him as well. She also fell in love with him because my husband is very charming and he knows what to say. Like, he's everybody's darling, kind of. And it got to a point, and I love to tell that story, but it got to a point, we've lived in Germany together, so we would see my family quite often. And when getting together with family, they would ask like, hey, how is Nacho? Or my brothers would call me, hey, Tina, I couldn't reach Nacho. Can I please talk to him? And I was like, I'm here as well. Hello. So yeah, I just love how family dynamics work sometimes. I guess that's my point. But getting back a little bit into your story, back into you moved to Cuba. For how long did you actually live there, and how old were you exactly when you moved to Cuba?
Oh, I can't answer you the question about how old I was. No, I think I was 25. Could be. Yeah. So I stayed actually because I had to leave Cuba because of the pandemic. The university wasn't opened or didn't want to open, so I couldn't start the language course or language class. So I actually had to leave after 3 months. And for Cuba, it's also something special. So I wouldn't be able to live with my boyfriend at that time and with his family. So if you're not married to a Cuban, you have also to get a family visa. So we actually had to go to the office with his dad, who is the owner of the house. He had to sign that I'm going to stay with him and his family. Yeah. So normally, if you're staying in a casa particular, this is a great experience to get to know the Cuban people better and also to support them. So you always have to sign in when you're staying and give your passport information. So yeah, this is normal in Cuba, but yeah. So we stayed with his family in Trinidad for some time, and then we also visited his family in Camagüey. So in those 3 months, I met basically almost all of his family. I'm saying almost because Cubans and most Latinos, they have a big family. So there's always someone coming up and saying, oh yeah, I'm actually his cousin. So yeah, but also now with his family, his sister's always asking, how is Lena doing? And can I talk to her? So the same story. Yeah.
How was it emotionally in general between like leaving Cuba, going back to Germany? Most likely you've searched for a job because you were, as far as I understood, you were employed again once you got back to Germany. You had the long distance relationship again. So there's this time frame of, as far as I understood, like approximately 2 or 3 years, because you met in 2019, then you moved to Cuba, and then you got back to Germany, and last year he was able to move to Germany as well. So you had quite a long time frame where you were still like on hold, not really knowing what's going to happen and how things are going to work out for you. How did it make you feel, and what actually did you do to stay connected and to work through it together? Is there any advice you can give?
Every goodbye was more and more difficult, especially when we got married last year. And then with my family there, my grandma had tears, my mom had tears, my sister had tears, because we got married. And normally you want to spend time, especially when you get married. And I wasn't possible to take him right away with me to Germany. But what I think was really, really important is the communication. So I think there was not even a day where we didn't communicate. It doesn't have to be always a phone call, a video call, but at least sending a text, hey, I'm okay, I'm at work, and to have a transparent communication. And jetzt fällt mir das englische Wort nicht ein, jetzt komme ich aufs Spanische. Trust. Das ist echt, ich denke ganz auf Spanisch, das ist super schwierig. It's really important to have lots of trust in your partner, because if you don't have trust, I think a long distance relationship doesn't work. You have to have trust. You have to have good communication. It's also important, if you have a fight or a discussion, to not just hang up, to talk about it, or at least say, I'm going to take a break. I have to calm down and let's talk again in an hour. So I think this is something what helped us a lot, and also staying positive. So because I'm German and I think most Germans are more negative, it was good to have a partner, because most Cubans think really positive. So he was always saying to me, Lena, we're going to get through this. We're going to work. This is going to work at the end. We're going to be meant to be together. And because we decided, when I went back to Germany, I got a job here, that we decided that we're going to have our lives first here in Germany. And then in a couple of years, wherever this is going to take us. But first, we're going to stay here in Germany. So this is what I would advise everyone who's having a long distance relationship: is communication, trust, and staying positive.
Yeah. Especially the last part is not that easy, staying positive. I remember how often I started doubting the decision of not the decision of having a long distance relationship, but there were moments where I felt super weak. And other days I felt like super strong, where I was like, we can do it. There's no doubt at all. And but especially out of my experience, the trust aspect, that's building over time as well. I remember in the beginning, it wasn't that easy for me, because I was like, okay, he can do whatever right now, and I wouldn't even know. And do we really know that each other so well? And I definitely had a lot of trust issues, but based on my previous experience I've made with men in my relationships that didn't go well, that it was a lot of work to get there. And also in our case, Najib proved a couple of times that, because he's taking action. So he's not only just talking to make me happy, but he's taking action. And this is something I really, really appreciate. And I will never forget, and I will always be grateful for, because that helped me a lot to trust him and to build a real connection on distance as well. But it is a lot of work. So
yeah,
you guys got married, your family joined you. You've mentioned everyone had tears in their eyes when you had to say goodbye again. What happened in between? Like, first of all, I would love to know how the marriage was and how you were able to blend two cultures, how the family get together was, and the whole experience behind it, because I'm sure it was also a bit emotional. And also the next steps you took after you got married.
So actually, we went to Cuba already in December because we planned a tour with my family. So my grandparents, my parents, and my sister, and my husband. So we picked him up, or he picked us up at the airport in Havana. And then he actually rented a big bus. So they call it Wawa in Cuba, bus, with a driver. And we drove through Cuba. We visited different spots before we came to Trinidad. So this was also a funny, stressful, interesting experience. And I mean, he already understood that, yeah, he has to learn more German, or he practices German to be able to speak with my family, because no one, especially my grandparents, they don't even speak English, to communicate with them. But it was a really nice and beautiful experience. I remember my grandpa showing him his flowers on his phone, or how he's playing instruments. Yeah, it was a really nice experience. And then we arrived in Trinidad. That's where he and his family live. And we also rented a casa particular there together. We arrived in Trinidad, where he and his family live. And because we wanted to get married there at the registration office, so the official marriage. And we were thinking, before that, we were thinking how we want to have the day. So for me, it was important that the family and the kids were all together. We would have a nice time. So we went to the office, and that's where his parents, his family met my family. Was also a really beautiful experience, also a little bit weird, because most Cuban people, they don't speak English. So there was lots of, it was difficult for them to communicate, because my family is speaking German and they're speaking Spanish. So I had to translate a lot. And yeah, but it was the ceremony was also funny, because we thought that we just gonna have to sign the papers. And then the woman from the office, she said, so now we're gonna have the ceremony. And I said to Ismel, but which ceremony? I thought we we're just gonna have to sign papers. So we were like, okay, but so we're gonna have the ceremony in Spanish? What are we gonna do? So he actually knew someone who could translate it into German. So he called him and he said, hey, can you come by? And can you spontaneously translate it and explain it to my family? So this is also something I think in general in Latin America, you have to be prepared that your wedding is not going to be perfect, and that, yeah, you have to expect that something is going to be happening that you didn't expect to be happening. So this was one thing. And then also to getting married, you need to have two people who cannot be family. So no family of him or of me. So we actually asked his brother's girlfriend and his sister's boyfriend if they could sign And then the night before we went to the office, the boyfriend of his sister said that he had to go to hospital because he broke his leg. And I was like, what are we going to do? We need two people who can sign those paper, and they can also not be my friends because they don't speak any Spanish. So we actually asked our taxi driver if he could sign our marriage paper. So yeah, it was an interesting experience.
Oh, he did that for you? That's so cute.
Yeah,
That's something that only happens in Latam, to be honest.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, but
nice.
it was really nice. So we actually had the translator. He tried to spontaneously translate like the most important things into German. And yeah, so then we actually went to our Casa Particular. We also had really nice owners. So they actually prepared like glasses. We brought in champagne, Sekt from Germany. So we could all say Xing Xing, Salut, and so on. And then the first group took the bus to the beach, or the taxi to the beach. And actually, my husband and I and my family, we went to the school to pick up all the kids. So my husband, he has a daughter, and we also picked up his sister's kids and his younger brother, and they all hopped into the bus with my family, all sitting there with my grandparents and my parents. And because they are also, I mean, they don't speak German, but it was like directly because they are also really open kids and directly talking to my family. And it was just like I wanted to have it. Like, it was a really beautiful day, and we all enjoyed it at the beach. We had such a nice time all together, and yeah, it was really nice. And then actually in the evening is when, because some of my friends, they were also doing a trip through Cuba. So some of them at that evening also were staying in Trinidad. So we all went to have dinner together, went to celebrate and dance, of course. And then a couple of days later, we went to Varadero, where we had our wedding. So it was also, the wedding was really nice. So some of his family, my husband's family member came, all of my friends. I think in total we were 30 or 40 people celebrating, and this ceremony was a really emotional experience. And it was just like, I exactly remember this moment when I went down on the beach with my father to see my husband, and I just wanted to be in his arms. So it was really, really special. And then 2 days later, we already had to leave. So
yeah, so no honeymoon trip or anything like this. But I'm sure that those days, obviously you will never forget it. But it also seems like most likely at family get-togethers, your family still loves to talk about it. No, I mean, it was an interesting experience for everyone.
Yeah.
And I love that your grandparents even joined, and they were like, yep, we're in, take us with you, and did the whole trip with you as well. That's very special. I'm glad you made this experience, and I'm sure it was a wonderful time you had there.
Yeah. I mean, for me, because I knew when Ismel would come here that we would also need support, because I'm working full time and he has to improve his German. So for me, it was really important that, because I'm really close to my family as well, that he would get along with my family, and also that I get the support as well here in Germany when we are living together. So yeah, actually also during the wedding, so he now has, or because he met also my friends, they also know his friends. So, and they actually found the same interests. Like, he loves to go fishing, which is not that common here in Germany. But yeah, lots of Cubans, they love fishing. So he actually met a friend of mine who also loves fishing. So actually this year in the summer, we are going together to Helgoland, which is a small island in Germany, where we're all going to go fishing together. So that's also really nice. Yeah.
So you guys had 2 more days after you got married to spend together, also to spend together with the families. And I guess once you got back to Germany, this is when, yeah, it all started over again. The whole paperwork, making sure that you have everything in order, because the goal, as far as I understood, was for him to come to Germany after you got married.
Yeah. So for him to get a visa for Germany, even though we are married, he had to do a German class in Cuba. So there is a German school in Havana where he had to go to get an A1 certificate, German A1 certificate. So this took him 2 months, about 2 months. And then also it takes 2 or 3 months at that time. No, it takes way longer to get the marriage certificate back. And then, of course, he had to translate lots of papers into German and then get an appointment for the German embassy. And from there, I think it can take, again, 2 until 3 months or something like that until I hear from it again, because if the German embassy will get into contact with the foreigner office here in Germany, and then I have to send them more papers. So yeah, what I actually did, because I think we waited a month or so, and so then my husband, he called the German embassy and he asked what's going on with the visa, why is this taking, and there they said, no, normally the papers already have to be here in Germany. So I called the foreigner office. Of course, they don't want to give you lots of information or any information. Yeah, but I actually got into contact with some politicians here to talk to the foreigner office. And as soon as they told me, we actually just now sent the paper back, or our decision again, to the German embassy. 2 hours later, my husband got called on his phone where they were saying he got his visa now. And he was actually right now already on his way from Trinidad to Havana, because we were expecting that he would get a result a week later or so. So he got to Havana, I think 1 or 2 days later. He got his visa, and he directly, I think a day later or so, he flew to Germany. So it was like really quick. Like I knew somehow a week before, that he would come to Germany. Because as soon as we got the information that he got his visa, we booked the flights.
But booking the flight for him to live in Germany already, or to visit first?
Well, so actually you get a visa for 3 months. So you don't get a visa for a longer time of period. And this means that in this time, a period of time of 3 months, the embassy has to give you an appointment so that you have to change the visa. So you will always get 3 months. And then after that, normally you will get a year. So at the moment, he has a visa until, I think, August. And then it depends on the decision of the foreigner office if they give you again 1 year or 3 years.
So, but that means that he did quite spontaneously packed almost all his belongings and went to Germany, because it has an open end. Like, it wasn't like, okay, I'm gonna visit for 3 weeks and then I go back to Cuba. But since he is in Germany, he stayed in Germany.
Yeah. So there are different kinds of visa. So there's the Schengen visa is just for the tourists, and the visa he got would be for staying a longer time of period. But you always get 3 months. But yeah, it was planned. When he was going to Havana, he already told his family, I'm going now to Havana and I'm probably not going to come back. I'm going to be flying to Germany in a week, I think, or he thought. But we didn't know until he got the call in the bus. So, yeah.
And when did he move exactly? How long ago?
This was so he came here July 15th. So almost a year now. Yeah, but time's flying.
Definitely. May I ask, is he, with the visa he has at the moment, is he allowed to work, or what's the status at the moment? Because I know at least we had some issues with that in the beginning, Because we had to apply for a different visa in the beginning as well. We're not sure.
No, he actually, so we had to wait for the appointment for him in the foreigner office because he needs to have to get a paper to start the integration course. So I think for most foreigners coming from outside of Europe, they have to do a German class or German course. This German course will take up to a year to get the B1 certificate in German. So, but normally those schools need a certification that he has to do this class because most of the classes or courses are fully packed. So mostly the people that have to take the class will get a space. So we had to wait for the appointment. And as soon as we had the appointment and he got his papers, he could actually start to work. But now the problem is, as he has to do the German class, and it's Tuesday until Friday in the morning, he can not work full time. Just doesn't fit. It doesn't work. So so at the moment he's not working full time. He's working part time, but he's also doing right now his driver license. So lots of going on, and I don't know, the time is flying. I remember when he first came to Germany and saw supermarkets for the first time, because there are no supermarkets in Cuba, and in general experiencing avenue here, the food and everything, or the amount of things that we have here in terms of clothes, food, and that they just don't have in Cuba was just overwhelming. And I knew that he would have a cultural shock. I knew that he would have. And I told him, but of course it's different if you're experiencing it. And you have to think that he, with 20 years old, it was his first time leaving his family. It was his first time leaving Cuba and being in a totally different environment. So I think it was beautiful, but also a sad time for him. And it still is, because he is missing a lot his family, because he's just also not used to traveling and being away from his family. So but he's doing a lot better at the moment. I think was maybe the first, would say, 6 months where he had the cultural shock, and he was adapting step by step, and now also being more able to speak in German. I mean, I sent him, actually, the first 2 days, I told him, if you you can just go to the supermarket by yourself. And this is what he did. So he's been really independent just from the beginning, because I knew that he had to be. It's always something different if I'm with him going to the supermarket. He's not going to speak German and he's going to be depending on me. So I sent him to the supermarket and I said, you're gonna buy us. Actually, I gave him like a really difficult task, because I told him, could you please buy, I don't know, a vegan salami or something like that. It took him a lot of time to find it, but he went to the staff working there and asked, hey, where can I find it? And I think this is the way how you adapt better and learn better the language. Or also in January, he actually took his first train to Berlin just by himself to visit a friend. So it has been an interesting time here in Germany.
I can imagine. Can definitely imagine. It was the same for us as well. And we lived in a small village in the beginning after moving together. But I feel the same right now. Like, I also have to force myself to, and I talked about that in my stories a couple of days ago, to go out and go to a bakery and speak Spanish and put the biggest smile and be super polite, so that, because you get the reaction as well. Like, at least here in Argentina, if you are open-minded and if you enter the room with a smile already, people are already like, okay. So they try everything to make you feel comfortable as well. And usually you also have a good chance to have a little chat as well. And this is what keeps on happening to me every time I do that. So I'm also trying to practice it, to actually talk to locals here. And to get into the Spanish language as deep as possible. But it's definitely a challenge, even though I think Spanish is a little bit easier than German. So for everyone who's learning German, I do have a lot of respect. And I know it's a difficult language, but yeah, I'm happy that you found your way and that he's making himself at home as well. And I hope he's doing it a little bit better nowadays.
Yeah. I think actually he is adapting really well, better than I thought, because the cultures are just so different, and also the language. And it's also a little bit my fault maybe, because when we met each other speaking Spanish, and we kept speaking Spanish. And I think this is the best way to learn a language. This is actually what somebody taught me before, is you have to get yourself a boyfriend to learn the language better. And it's actually true. Yeah, but now we're trying to speak a mix of German and Spanish for him to improve his German. But of course, it's still difficult because he knows that I understand him if he speaks Spanish. So he doesn't have to speak with me German. And of course, it's easier with someone who just understands German. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. To bring this conversation to an end, usually I would ask, what is your biggest advice? The biggest advice one big advice you've already given during where you were in your long distance relationship was that you communicated a lot, and you communicated openly. Also, you wouldn't just hang up the phone. Now your husband moved to Germany and he had to adapt to a new culture. You did that as well while living in Cuba. Your experience in Cuba, his experience in Germany. Now you both know both sides. When it comes to this, what were your learnings? And out of your learnings, what advice would you like to share on this specific aspect?
Okay. Yeah, so I think it's important that you have to be open-minded, and it's also important that everyone also has his own interests and his own friends. Because now, for instance, in Germany, if he would not have any friends or talking to my family or have his own interests, we would only speak or mostly speak Spanish together. So it's important to have also someone outside of the relationship, to meet new people, to get to know the culture better, to improve the language. What I have also found, I think you also get to know the person in a different way. Like if you're having a long distance relationship and meeting that person in this one country, and then you're moving to another country, I think you also get to know the person again in a different way, because the environment is totally different. And I think what is also important is, especially if your partner has this cultural shock, which is totally normal for everyone moving to a different country, it's important to be that support system, and again, to be positive, or to tell your partner to be positive. Because for me, it was really interesting, as normally he is the positive person. When he came to Germany, I was more the positive person. And I think because he took me in Cuba, he took me with open arms. Like I was able to live with his family. He was cooking for me. And I think it's something I have also to give him back. And especially for him, it was important, I think, to know that I would be here with him, because he didn't know anyone. So he was giving me that trust that he wouldn't be by his own here, that I would always be on his side. And what someone also has taught me, someone else who has been in a long distance relationship and then they moved together, was that this is like the hardest part, is when you're in a long distance relationship, and then for the Cuban person coming to your country, this is when you know if the relationship works. Because it's maybe it's difficult for someone coming from a first world country But for someone coming from a third world country, he or she will understand that this is, something totally different that person is experiencing. Even though maybe I have told my husband it's going to be like that, or you have to understand, for instance, you're going to have a better life, but your family's still going to be in Cuba. So, but I think until that person doesn't experience it, it's difficult for that person to understand. This is what I'm trying to say, is as long as the person isn't experiencing it, I can tell my husband, or I could have taught him as much times, but also the cultural shock, until he's not experiencing it, he's not gonna fully understand what I mean. Yeah, so I think it's important to, again, give this support, have good communication. And what I think is also important is that your partner who's going to move to your country, that your partner isn't every day or every time in contact with their friends and family from back home, to fully integrate into your culture, because it's going to be more difficult if you're in every minute talking to your family, to actually be here also with your mind.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, obviously, family, if something comes up and you want to feel close to them again, it's great to have your phone and just be one call away in today's world. I can only imagine how difficult that must have been centuries ago. But yeah, I understand the point, definitely, especially in the beginning when everything is new and you want to experience everything. I mean, like you just mentioned, how amazed he was by a supermarket, like things that are normal for us, they were super special for him. And I'm sure he felt like in the beginning, especially, he wants to share it with everyone back home. But then the question is, when do you reach the point where you actually settle in a way that you are fully present and that you, how would you say that in English, but more like recognize it as your new home, as the country you live in as well. But yeah, for everyone who wants to learn more about you as well as about your relationship, who is maybe in a similar situation as you are right now, as you used to be, who maybe has a similar background in general, like German and Cuba, what is the best way to reach you and to connect with you?
So you can actually reach me on my Instagram. Our Instagram is called 2 Hearts, 1 Journey. And yeah, so you can contact me. You can ask me anything if you want to travel to Cuba, or if you want to know more about a long distance relationship, or you want to have any advice about the Latin culture or how it is living in Germany. You can just send me a text, a message, and on Instagram.
I'm going to link this in the side notes, obviously, as well as in the description of the YouTube video. And yeah, it was really, really nice to meet you, Lena, and to talk to you in person, to get to know you a little bit better, as well as your story and where you're at nowadays. I'm also quite curious to see where your journey is going to lead you. As I understood, you are going to stay in Germany most probably for a while, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks a lot for taking the time talking to me today and for being so open-minded and so honest and giving us, letting us be part of your journey as well. Really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you.
Take care and hope to see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for watching and or for listening to today's podcast episode. If you like what I'm doing, don't forget to rate this podcast with 5 stars. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe. And if you would like to sit down with me and tell your love story, feel free to use the forum. I linked it in the YouTube description as well as in the side notes of the podcast. have a lovely morning, have a lovely afternoon, have a lovely evening, wherever you're listening from or watching from, and see you.
Ciao.
Bye.